Okay, good morning, all the students. Today we are going to deal with an important topic of cross-validation. Though by that name it is not exactly given in your textbook, the process explained can be generally named as cross-validation under machine learning concept, right? So that is very much required to select between algorithms when most of the algorithms are performing very well with your training examples. Which algorithm you have to select? Okay, that decision can be taken in an informed way if you know how this cross validation can be done. Can you see the presentation? Okay, in the last class we dealt with the concept of how to calculate the difference in error of two hypotheses. For that we have taken D as the difference between true errors and D cap as the estimation of difference between sample errors. Okay, and we try to minimize the difference between this D and D cap in order to get a more generalizable machine learning model. Now, in today's class, we are going to see how to compare learning algorithms. Say not one algorithm is sufficient in order to fit your data to perform better with unseen data. So you have to select, you have to fit your data with different types of algorithms and check which one is performing the best. Say if you are trying to predict the sale price of a house, in that case, you are trying to predict some continuous value. You are trying to predict some numerical value. In that case, you may have to adopt regression models like linear regression, ridge regression, lasso regression, polynomial regression, multilinear regression. Lots of algorithms are there. Now, among these algorithms, which algorithm is giving you a good fit of the data? Good fit of the training examples, which explains very well the behavior of the training examples, so that when some unseen data is given, it should be able to predict as accurately as possible, right? But when we take classification algorithms, say if your outcome is a binary value or some multiple classes, say the machine is performing without any fault, or it is performing with fault 1, or it is performing with fault 2, or it is performing with fault 3. In that case, we call it as multi-class problem. But when we say whether a customer will be a defaulter or not, yes or no, in that case, it is a binary classification. That is defaulter. The end value, the categorization will be in terms of defaulter or not a defaulter, right? In this case, we call it as a binary classification problem. Or when we say the customer stays loyal to a company or he moves on to a different organization. In that case, it is loyal or not, right? A transaction is fraudulent or not. In that case, when we are trying to categorize it into two classes, then it is called as binary classification problem. Did you understand this now? So we, for this type of classification problems, you have naive-based classifier, decision trees, then you have AdaBoost, then XBoost, XGBoost, extreme boosting classifier, then normal supervised algorithms like KNN, K-nearest neighbor, K-means clustering. Lots of such supervised algorithms are available. But which algorithm is performing the best? Means which algorithm is categorizing the data at hand in a proper way so that it gets pure classifications. It clearly divides the data into two categories. Which algorithm is performing the best at that particular task? Which algorithm is performing best at a target function? That is very much required. So you need to compare the learning algorithms and find out which algorithm is performing the best. For that, training set accuracy and test set accuracy alone are not enough. Some starters may think that, some beginners may think that, say you get some training set accuracy and test set accuracy. Yes, training set accuracy it is 90% and test set accuracy it is giving around 88%. Now we feel that that may be sufficient, but actually you have to check over many other evaluation metrics in order to select a machine learning algorithm, not only the test set, training set accuracy and the test set accuracy. Remember students, whenever you are given some data set and you are asked to build a machine learning model on that, then you find not only the training set and test set accuracy, but also you try to understand, you try to find their accuracy across cross-validated partitions. Okay, so you divide the same data set into different parts and take one part as test set and all the remaining parts as training set. Again, in the next iteration, you select a different part as test set and all the remaining parts as training set. This makes the data set undergo training as well as test phases uh, completely, so that you can develop a model which is not biased. Okay, so that if you have most of the deciding factors in the test set or only in the training set, in that case your machine learning model's accuracy may be biased, its performance may be biased. But if you make the data set undergo complete data set undergo both training as well as testing phases, in that case you will get a best performing model, unbiased estimate of the performance of the model. Unbiased estimate means it is not biased towards some training examples or towards some test examples. It is unbiased. There is no partiality in the performance. Okay, so that I'll explain more clearly. I'm just giving you an overview of the concept. Now I'll start explaining by taking some examples so that you will understand better. Now, machine learning experts may be interested in comparing the performance of two learning algorithms. Let us denote two learning algorithms as LA and LB. Okay, first learning algorithm, say it is taking up the algorithm by the name A, and second learning model is taking up by the algorithm B. Say in the first case it is multi-layer perceptron. In the second, or it has taken back propagation algorithm. In the second case, it has taken Gauss-Ney-Bayes algorithm. Okay, so this is the learning model with a algorithm which has been learned by, which has been trained by using algorithm A, and this is a learning model which has been trained by using algorithm B. Okay, so these are two learning algorithms, LA and LB. Rather than comparing two hypotheses, here we are trying to compare two algorithms. In previous cases, we have compared H1, H2 as two hypotheses, and we have understood the performance of the model, or we have understood how better those hypotheses are performing given the training examples. But in this case, we are not taking the hypothesis. We are taking the learning models and trying to compare them according to their evaluation metrics. Okay, now what is the question? Why we are proceeding with this concept? What is an appropriate test for comparing learning algorithms? And how can we determine whether an observed difference between the algorithms is statistically significant? I said I explained in yesterday's class what is statistical significance. Statistical significance of a particular model states that the relation between the parameters doesn't happen by chance. It has some proof that it happened. Okay, it has some support that why it is happening. Okay, it is not simply by chance. It is not simply by a cause, say reason or cause. Okay, it has some support in favor of that particular test. Then we say it is statistically significant. Okay, now what is an appropriate test for comparing learning algorithms? Say you have some 5 learning algorithms, among them 3 are performing very well according to training set and test set accuracy. In that case, which algorithm to select? What is an appropriate test for comparing learning algorithms? And how can we determine whether an observed difference between the algorithms is statistically significant? The difference between the algorithms is not by chance. It has some statistical significance. One algorithm is very much suitable to the data set given than the other algorithm. It has some proof It is not happening by chance. It is happening with some statistical significance. Okay, now how to compare them, how to measure them, how to determine that this observed difference between the algorithms, learning algorithms, is statistically significant. Okay, that we are going to see today. Now we begin by specifying the parameter we wish to estimate. Here, what is the parameter we are wishing to estimate? We wish to determine which one is the better algorithm, right? Suppose we wish to determine which of the learning algorithms, whether it is LA or LB, is the better learning method on average for learning some particular target function F. Be it a regression task, be it a classification task, but at learning this target function, which learning model is performing the best? Okay, which is giving a better accuracy? That we are going to find out. Not only accuracy, but in other with respect to other terms also. Now, a reasonable way to define on average, underline this word, on average, is to consider the relative performance of these two algorithms averaged, again, averaged over all the training sets of size n that might be drawn from the underlying instance distribution D. Most of the time, did you observe in machine learning this course, I'm giving long points because every term in the point, every word in the sentence has lots of meaning. It plays its important role in the definition of that, in the explanation of that sentence. So I'm not making the point short. If I make the point short, it will lose its meaning. That is why I'm writing long sentences and emphasizing each and every word so that you understand the essence behind that sentence. Okay, students, so listen carefully. A reasonable way to define on average is to consider the relative performance of these two algorithms. Relative performance, how one is performing with respect to the other. Okay, averaged over all the training sets of size n. We are taking n number of training sets. I'll show you how it can be divided. That might be drawn from the underlying instance distribution D. We assumed that when training examples are drawn at random independently to make a sample, say your training set has some 2 lakh or 3 lakh data points. In that case, when you are performing this training, when you are training the machine learning model, you pick them. You pick the data points into training set and into test set randomly. You don't say that first 80% should be in the training set and last 20% should be in the test set. No, you are picking each of the training examples randomly so that they fall independently. We are picking them independently and randomly so that they some random instances fall into training set and some random instances fall into test set. Okay, now you know what is training set and test set, right? You train the machine learning model using the training set. Now it gives some accuracy. Now you have a test set which is not shown to the machine learning model. Now this is called as unseen data or new data points, what I have been talking about in every day's class. Now this test set is handed over to the machine learning model that is already trained on the training set, and it is asked to predict those test set labels. Test set labels are hidden and only the attributes are given. Now when the attributes are given, it will try to predict the labels. Now the existing labels of the test set and the predicted labels are compared. Say out of 20 data points, it is predicting 15 data points correctly. In that case, we say it is performing with 75% accuracy. Got it? Out of 20, if it is predicting 15 of them correctly, then we say that the test set accuracy is 75%. Did you understand? That is what we mean by training set and test set. Training set is used to train the machine learning model. Test set is used to validate the machine learning model. Check whether it is generalizable with the new data or unseen data by handing it over the test set and validating it, seeing how good it predicts the test set labels. Did you understand now? Now, read this again. A reasonable way to define on average, we are taking the average over all n training data sets. All n training sets. Okay, so a reasonable way to define on average is to consider the relative performance of these two algorithms average over all the training sets of size n that might be drawn from the underlying instance distribution D. The underlying distribution is assumed to be the same. You don't have outliers. Now, when I'm taking college students' data, do I have patients' data in the middle? No, they are from the same distribution. They are from the same environment. They are drawn, but they are drawn randomly and independent of each other. The draws are independent of each other. Means picking up one training example doesn't influence the selection of next draw, next picking of the data point into the sample or into the training set. Okay, so this underlying instance distribution D means they are assumed to follow a distribution. They are assumed to have a distribution, underlying distribution, same distribution. They are said to come from same distribution. Okay, that is D. Now, in other words, we wish to estimate the expected value of the difference in their errors. So we are trying to find out what is the error with the first learning algorithm. What is the true error? Did you notice this? Error D means what? True error. What is the difference between the true error of the first learning algorithm and the second learning algorithm? What is the estimated value of the difference? What is the expected value of the difference in their true errors of those two machine learning models? Now, what do we mean by this? S is subset of D means the sample drawn is from the same distribution D, from the same underlying distribution D. That is why it is given as S drawn from D, S subset of D. Means S is having the same distribution as D. S is picked from the same distribution, from the dataset having the same distribution D. Got it? So why we are using E here? It is the estimated value or the expected value of the difference, true errors, the difference of true errors of the two learning algorithms LA and LB. So what is your objective here? We are trying to calculate the true difference between true errors of those two learning algorithms. If you are able to know that difference, we can compare them and see which one is performing the best. Got it? So here I just mentioned what each term is denoted, what each term denotes, where L of S denotes the hypothesis output by learning method L. When given the sample S of training data, where the subscript here S subset of D indicates that expected value is taken over samples S drawn according to the underlying instance distribution D. Okay, this is simply represented like this. I'm reading this representation again. It is the expected difference between the true errors of each of the learning algorithms we are comparing, given that it is trained on the sample S drawn from the distribution D. Am I clear now? Now, the above expression describes the expected value of the difference in errors between learning methods LA and LB. Learning method using algorithm A and learning method using algorithm B, LA and LB. Got it? Now, in practice, we have only a limited sample D naught of data when comparing learning methods. Sometimes we may not have 2 lakh data points in the sample, or sometimes we may not have even 100 data points in the sample. We may have very less number of data points. In that case, we can perform this cross-validation task. when the data points are very less in the sample, when the number of training examples are very less, then you have different techniques that you can approach. Let us discuss them. In such cases, one obvious approach to estimating the above quantity is to divide D naught, that is the number of training examples in a sample available, into a training set denoted by S naught. See the representations. When we are discussing the formulas, you should be aware of these representations. Training set is denoted by S naught, and a disjoint test set denoted by T naught. Okay, why we call it as disjoint test set? You are making a clear partition. Say you have 100 data points. In that, you take S naught as some 80 data points which are randomly picked. You're not taking first 80 data points as training set and last 20 data points as test set. No, you're drawing them randomly. You're picking them randomly, independent of each other. The draws are independent of each other. Okay, so it is a random selection, and your test set will have remaining 20 of the data points, and these two are disjoint. They are not overlapping, means the data point in the test set is not available in the training set, and the data point in the training set is not available in the test set. Got it? So I have 100 data points. Say when we are taking the example of playing tennis, whether on a given day, when the climatic condition is given, like sky is sunny, whether it is rainy or whether it is cloudy, what is the overcast, what is the outlook, whether the temperature changes on the particular day, all this data is given. The labels are whether the tennis will be played on that particular day or not. 100 such data points are given. Or say symptoms of the patients are given. Having dry cough, yes or no. Having cold, yes or no. Having temperature, yes or no. Having say weight loss, yes or no. These are all the symptoms, attributes. Okay. Now for them labels are given, whether the patient is diagnosed positive or negative, yes or no. Whether he has acquired the disease, yes or no. Okay, these are the labels. In such cases, say you have 100 patient data. From that, you divide the data set into disjoint training set and test set. 80-20 rule, or sometimes you may have 70-30 also. It is dependent on the domain expert. How much training examples are, how many training examples are required in order to train the model. Sometimes you can go for 90 data points in training set and only 10 data points in test set. It depends. Okay, it depends on the context. It depends on the criticality of the application of the machine learning model and many other such criteria. Okay, so if you have 100 patients data, generally the training set size will be 80% and the test set size will be 20%. And remember, they are disjoint. There is no overlapping between training set and test set. None of the training examples fall in the test set, and none of the test set data points are available in the training set. That is why we call them as disjoint. Now, training set is indicated by S naught and test set is indicated by T naught. Okay, remember this representation. Now, the training data can be used to train both LA and LB. We are using the training set to train with both LA, algorithm A, say k-nearest neighbor, and algorithm B, say neural network. And the test set can be used to compare the accuracy of two learned hypotheses. Now, training is done. You have some training set accuracy. Now, how to validate them? You pass the new data points held in the test set, unseen by the machine learning models. Now, you pass them to learning algorithm A and learning algorithm B. See how good they are performing. Say, learning algorithm A is predicting 18 out of 20 correctly, and algorithm B is predicting 15 out of 20 correctly. Then which algorithm is performing better? Obviously, algorithm A is performing better, right? So it is giving high test set accuracy. It is highly generalizable compared to the learning algorithm B. Got it? In other words, we measure the quantity. What we are measuring? The error with the test set that is seen by algorithm A and the error with the test set T naught that is encountered by the algorithm B. Now, why we are taking S naught here? S naught is the training set that LA is trained on and LB is trained on. S naught is the training set that the two algorithms are trained on. Now, what is the error those algorithms are giving with respect to the test set T naught? Okay, that is what we mean by this representation. It is very, very clear, right? I'm repeating again. S naught is the training set and two algorithms LA and LB are trained on this training set S naught. Now you want to validate, you want to see what is the test set accuracy or what is the test set error. Both are complementary, right? I can call it as test set accuracy, or the other way I can also calculate test set error. If I know the test set accuracy as 95%, then obviously the test set error is 5%. Or if I know the test set error is 10%, the test set accuracy is 90%, right? In that way, when the two algorithms LA and LB are trained on the training set S naught, what is the difference between their errors with respect to the test set T naught? That is what we mean by this representation. I hope I'm very clear now, right? You are trying to find out the differences between the test set errors. You're trying to find out the difference between the test set errors T naught. Okay. Now notice the two different key differences between them. In this representation and in this representation, what are the two key differences? Both are almost the same, right? But what are the key differences? Test set is being used to approximate true error, and we are measuring the difference in errors for one training set S naught rather than taking the expected value of this difference over all samples S that might be drawn from the distribution D. So what we are doing here is we are not trying to find out the error on the entire data set. We are dividing it into training set and test set. Okay, and you're training the algorithm on the training set and finding its error on the test set. That is the only difference. Here you are just training them on the entire sample, but here you are training it on the partitioned training set and calculating the error on the test set, T naught. Okay, that is the only difference. You can adopt this approach or this approach, but this approach will turn out to be more efficient. Why? Because you're trying to validate your machine learning model with some unseen data, that is T naught. In this case, you're not doing that. Got it? Now, one way to improve the estimator given by this representation, how can you improve it? How can you improve the estimator? Is to repeatedly partition the data D naught into disjoint training and test sets and to take the mean of the test set errors for these different experiments. I'll explain you here. First, you just go through the steps. I'll explain how these steps are done with a figurative example and again come back and understand the procedure so that it will be more easily understood, right? So one way to improve this estimator is, what is our approach? To repeatedly partition the data D naught, divide it into different parts, into disjoint training and test set, and take the mean of the test set errors for these different experiments. Just keep it in your mind, I'll explain clearly. This leads to the processor shown in the table for estimating the difference between errors of two learning methods based on a fixed sample D naught of available data. Now see the procedure, then we'll come back again. Partition the available data D naught, say you have 100 data points, into k disjoint subsets. Divide them into say 10 disjoint subsets, each containing 10 training examples. T1, T2 and so on up to Tk of equal size. They should be of equal size, where this size is at least 30. You should ensure that each subset has at least 30 data points. Okay, now for I from 1 to k, for each of those subsets, do use Ti for the test set. One partition you keep it for testing, and the remaining 9 partitions you keep it for training. How we are representing that? From the available data D naught, remove Ti, means remove one partition as test set and use the remaining partitions as training set. That is total 9 partitions as training set. Now train algorithm A on this training set, that is your hypothesis learned on the algorithm A, and train algorithm B on this training set Si, that is the hypothesis learned by using algorithm B. Now the difference between these two hypotheses will give you delta I. Now return the value delta bar where it is average of all the errors, all the average of difference between all the errors between the hypothesis for each of the partition. Now wait, do not worry, I'll explain you with an example and we'll come back again, then it will make better sense for you. Now let us see how cross validation works. Say you have 300 data points. Listen carefully, students. You have 300 data points, which is represented by D naught. Now you partition them into equal parts. Divide them into equal parts. Say take 10 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, 10 parts. Now, when 300 data points are divided into 10 parts, each part contains how many data points? 30 data points, right? Now, among them, take this as the test set, T naught, and take all the remaining parts as the training set, S naught. Okay, in the first iteration. Now, take again in the second iteration, divide them into, already they are divided into 10 equal parts. Now, take the second partition as T naught and all these partitions, remaining partitions as S naught. In the next iteration, among those 10 partitions, take the third part as the training set T naught and the remaining parts as, take the third part as test set and the remaining parts as training set. Okay, so each time what you're doing, in each iteration what you're doing, one partition you are taking for testing and all the remaining 9 partitions you are taking for training. Did you understand now? Now, in every iteration, so this will undergo how many iterations totally? 10 iterations. Now, out of this, through these 10 iterations, each part of the data set is undergoing training as well as testing. Okay. Now, each iteration will give you training set error and test set error. T naught, error associated with S naught, and error associated with T naught. Right? Again, in this second iteration, you will get training set error and test set error. Again, in the third iteration, you will get training set error and the test set error. Now you take average of all these test set errors across these 10 iterations. That will give you the error across across the entire data set. You're taking the average of test set errors of all these 10 iterations. That will give you the entire data set's test set error. Got it? Now we'll go back. Now see this. Let us see the procedure once again. This leads to the procedure shown in the table for estimating the difference between errors of two learning methods based on a fixed sample D naught of available data. Now your available data is D naught. It is partitioned into K is dependent on the machine learning expert's interest. It can be 10 partitions or it can be 20 partitions, but see that minimum 30 data points lie in each partition so that the error calculation that you draw will be reliable. Okay, so you make 10 partitions if you have 300 data points so that every partition contains 30 data points. Now in each iteration, one partition will undergo testing and remaining 9 partitions will undergo training. Now, after all the 10 iterations, you have some measures of test set errors. Add them up, average them. That will give you this delta bar. Let us see each of the steps once again. Partition the available data D naught into K disjoint subsets. How many subsets we are making here? 10 subsets. T1, T2 and so on up to Tk of equal size. Remember, they should be of equal size, where this size is at least 30. We are ensuring that it is having sufficient amount of data in each partition to perform this cross validation. Right? Why we are calling it as cross validation? Because each partition will undergo testing to perform the validation. That is why it is called as cross validation. Now for I from 1 to K, we are taking each of the partition into I and performing some operation on it. Okay, for that we are taking the iterator I. For I from 1 to K, from first partition to the last partition, what you have to do? Use Ti, one partition, for the test set. Say the first iteration, first partition is the test set. In the second iteration, second partition is the test set. In third iteration, third partition is the test set. Use Ti for the test set and the remaining data for training set Si. Okay, all the remaining 9 partitions to be Si. Now, how Si is prepared? From the available data D naught, if you remove the partition that is taken for test set, it will give you the remaining training set, remaining 9 partitions as the training set. Now, see this step, train algorithm A using this training set Si, which will make it learn the hypothesis HA. Now train another algorithm, train using another algorithm, train a machine learning model using another algorithm B on this training set Si, which will make it learn another hypothesis HB. Now, what is the error Ti? Means, what is the test set error associated with HA with partition I? Ti means test set with first partition, I equal to 1. Test set when second partition is taken. Test set when third partition is taken. I is 1, 2, 3 and so on. Each iteration value. Right? Now error Ti of HA indicates this test set's error, this partition's error associated with this particular partition with respect to HA, first learning model, and with respect to HB, second learning model. What is the difference between the hypothesis? That is taken as delta I. Now return delta bar. What is this delta bar? Average of all these delta I. That is indicated here. Did you see? Sigma I equal to 1 to k. For every partition, find out delta I. That is the error difference in the errors between the two hypotheses with respect to the test set. Take that sum, take the average divided by k means number of partitions. Take the average and that gives you the average test set error across all the partitions. I'm repeating, when you add up every iterations, every partitions, every test set partitions, differences in the hypothesis, learning model A and learning model B, what error it is giving, difference between them, add them up for each iteration and take the average, that will give you the average of all the test set errors across all the partitions with respect to learning algorithm A and learning algorithm B. Did you get now? Did you understand this procedure now? Now let us go to next part. This procedure first partitions the data into k disjoint subsets of equal size. Once again, I'm repeating the same thing so that you'll understand better. This procedure now first partitions the data into k disjoint subsets of equal size. Here 10, k is equal to 10, where the size is at least 30. Ensure that the sample size will not go below 30. Okay. Now it then trains and tests the learning algorithms k times. It is testing on the first partition, second partition, third partition, k times. It tests k times using each of the k subsets in turn as the test set and using all remaining data as the training set. That is what we discussed, right? In this way, the learning algorithms are tested on k independent test sets. There is no overlapping between the test set. All are clear partitions, and in each iteration, one partition is taken as the test set. Okay, so in this way, the learning algorithms are tested on k independent test sets, and the mean difference in errors delta bar. Mean difference means the average of the differences between the learning algorithms taken on each test set. Okay, the mean difference in the errors delta bar is returned as an estimate of the difference between the two learning algorithms. Is it clear? Still, if you don't understand, after the class, just go through the steps according to the cross-validation task I explained, you will clearly understand. Now, the quantity delta bar returned by the procedure in the table can be taken as an estimate of the desired quantity. This one. What is that? True errors of the difference between the true errors of error associated with learning algorithm A and error associated with learning algorithm B. What is the estimate of that? Okay, that we can find out. Now, more appropriately, we can view delta bar as an estimate of the quantity. Instead of this, we are just, instead of D, we are giving D naught, because we are not taking the entire data set, we are taking a part of it, that is D naught, limited data sample, that is D naught. Okay, where S represents a sample, a random sample of size k minus 1 by k D naught drawn uniformly from D naught. What is the time, students? What is the time?
9:20, ma'am.
Okay, yeah. Where S represents a random sample of size k minus 1 by k D naught drawn uniformly from D naught. What is this measure? What is the number of partitions we have taken? K is equal to 10. And what is D naught? Total size of the this one data set we have taken as 300, right? So what is k minus 1 by k? It is 9 by 10 multiplied by 300, which will give you 270. Means always 270 data points in the sample are taken for training. Did you notice? Every partition is having 30 data points and 9 partitions are always taken for training. So it is 9 into 30, you will get 270 data points are taken for training and 30 data points are taken for testing in each iteration. Okay, that is what we mean by this measure, where S represents a random sample, that is the training set of size k minus 1 by k multiplied by absolute value of D naught. That is total 300 data points. And k is equal to 10. Each time S, that is the training set, it has 270 data points in each iteration, which is used to train learning algorithm A and which is used to train the model using learning algorithm A and learning algorithm B. Now, what is the true error associated with that learning algorithms? That estimate we are trying to measure. Now, the approximate n% confidence interval for estimating the quantity for this particular measure using delta bar is given by, you know what is delta bar now? It is the mean of errors across all the iterations between the two learning algorithms. So delta bar plus or minus Tn comma k minus 1 S delta bar. Understand this carefully. I am explaining each and every mathematical term involved. If you focus, it is very easy to understand, right? So what is this delta bar? This delta bar is the mean error across all the partitions between which measures the difference in the errors between two learning models LA and LB. Okay, that is delta bar plus or minus. What is this T now? It is same as your Z score, you remember? Z score, critical value. A critical value which is used to calculate the confidence interval. This Tn comma k minus 1 is same as that Z score. Critical value, we can call it as critical value, where n specifies the confidence interval and k minus 1 specifies the degree of freedom. What is this degree of freedom k minus 1? K is the number of partitions into which you have divided your data set. And one partition you are preserving for testing, validating, and the k minus 1 partitions you are keeping it for training. So you have k minus 1 degrees of freedom. Okay, so this k minus 1 is the degrees of freedom to measure the error, right? So T critical value is calculated. For this also you will have tables in Google. When you calculate the T table, when you search for the T table, you will get at what degrees of freedom, at what confidence interval, you will have a T value. It will be taken as a table. All the degrees of freedom, K minus 1, K minus 2, K minus 3, or simply they will be given as numbers at degrees of freedom 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at confidence intervals 80%, 90%, 99%. You will have certain values. These are called as T values. Okay. Now at 80% confidence interval and 1 degree of freedom, what is the T value? At 99% confidence interval, at 2 degrees of freedom, what is the T value? That T value can be located from your T table. Okay, that critical value multiplied by the sample's error, mean error associated, which can be given by the difference between the two learning algorithms, mean difference between the two learning algorithms, delta bar. This will help you to calculate the confidence interval within which the difference between these two learning algorithms error will fall into, right? That is what we explain here, where Tn comma k minus 1 is a constant that plays a role analogous to that of Zn, same as that of Zn in our earlier confidence interval expressions, and where S delta bar is an estimate of the standard deviation of the distribution governing delta bar. S is what? Standard deviation that is associated with the distribution governing this delta bar, that is the error between the difference of the errors in the two learning algorithms. So this S delta bar, how can we mathematically represent it? How can you calculate that? S delta bar is equivalent to square root of, this is actually the variance. Did you observe? Variance is deviation of each partition's error from the mean error. Observe this carefully. Delta I is each partition's error, test error, that is a difference between that and the mean error. Mean error is delta bar. Across each partition, you have measured some error, a difference in the error between two learning algorithms, right? And you summed up all of them. That will give you delta bar. Now, the deviation of each partition's error from this delta bar whole square across all the partitions I equal to 1 to k, you will get the variance, right? Multiplied by 1 by k into 1 minus, k into k minus 1. That is the averaging. You are averaging across all the partitions. But why we are taking k minus 1 is because you are preserving one partition for test set. You're not measuring that error separately. Okay, always only 9 partitions will be taken. The error is attributed to only 9 partitions. The error can be distributed across 9 partitions randomly. That is why you are taking k minus 1. Okay, now this term, only this term without the square root will give you variance, and when you apply the square root over that, it will give you standard deviation. Okay, that standard deviation with respect to this delta bar, mean error, can be calculated. Once that is calculated, you can easily calculate the confidence interval. Now selected values for the parameter t are given in the table. This is how your t table appears. Now this V is nothing but that degrees of freedom. Let us take this V as degrees of freedom. Degrees of freedom means if you have 2 variables, if you have 5 variables, if you have 10 variables, among that over which you can distribute the error. In this case, we can distribute the error for k minus 1 partitions. In the same way, if you take V as degrees of freedom, if the degrees of freedom is 2, if the degrees of freedom is 5, if the degrees of freedom is 10, for each of the confidence interval, what is the t value? I'll read this table, listen carefully. At 90% confidence interval and 2 degrees of freedom, the t value is 2.92. At 99% confidence interval and the degrees of freedom as 120, what is the t value? 2.62. This is how you need to locate the t value in the t distribution table. Right? Now, notice that as k tends to infinity, means in this case V we are denoting as degrees of freedom in the table, but actually we are dealing with that term as k in our problem, number of partitions. Okay, so notice that as k tends to infinity means as the degrees of freedom goes towards infinity, the value of t n k minus 1 approaches the constant Zn. Did you notice that? It is slowly coming near to the value of Z score. T value will reach the value of Z score as the degrees of freedom tends to infinity. Got it? Notice that as k tends to infinity or degrees of freedom tends to infinity, the value of t approaches the constant Zn. That is why, see, when you take 95% confidence interval at some infinite degree, it is 1.96. Generally, it is z-score is 1.28. Now this has 1.96, almost equal, right? So whenever degrees of freedom tends to infinity, this t value goes towards the z-score value itself. Okay, let me come. Yeah, only one more slide remaining. Let me complete. Note the procedure described here for comparing two learning methods involves testing the two learned hypotheses on identical test sets. Here we are taking identical test sets. In both the cases, test sets are the same. But we are testing two different hypotheses on the same test set. Here we are taking two different hypotheses and testing them on the same test set. Okay, this contrasts with the method for comparing hypotheses that have been evaluated using independent test sets. There would be another method where we may have two test sets which are tested on two different hypotheses. But in this approach, in cross-validation approach, what we are doing is we are testing two different hypotheses on a single test set and comparing their performance. Now, tests where the hypotheses are evaluated over identical samples. You take the same sample and test with different hypotheses. They are called as paired tests. The name given to that kind of test is paired test. Now, paired tests typically produce tighter confidence intervals because any differences in observed errors in a paired test are due to differences between the hypotheses. So whenever you are performing the paired test, any difference you find in the paired test, any differences in the observed errors you find in the paired test are due to the difference in the hypothesis. This hypothesis may be different and the second hypothesis may be different, but they are being evaluated on the same sample. So any difference you find is with respect to hypothesis, not with respect to the sample. Okay, so in that case, you have tighter confidence intervals because tighter confidence interval means when you have a distribution like this, the confidence interval will be tighter. It may be only 75% or it may be only 70%. It is not as large as 95%. Okay, so you will have tighter confidence intervals to be considered whenever you are considering paired tests where two hypotheses are tested on a single sample, same sample, so that the difference is with respect to hypothesis only, not with respect to the sample. Now, in contrast, what is the other way? When the hypotheses are tested on separate data samples, say you have taken samples S1 and S2, and you have tested hypothesis H1 on S1 and H2 on S2. Now, differences in the two sample errors might be partially attributable to differences in the makeup of the two samples. In this case, there may be difference in the constitution of the sample, means contents of sample S1 may be different and contents of sample S2 may be little different, though they are drawn from the same distribution. In that case, the difference in the sample errors may be attributed not only to the hypothesis, but partially it can be attributed to the difference in the samples also. So whenever you are performing this pairwise test, you have to see whether the hypothesis is tested on a single sample, same sample, or whether the hypothesis is tested on different samples, so that you can understand why the difference in the sample error is actually existing, whether it is with respect to only hypothesis or whether it is with respect to hypothesis as well as the samples. Okay, so repeatedly watch this video in order to get comfortable with all these terms, students. Once you understand this, it will make your journey to selecting the machine learning, best performing machine learning models will be more smoother, right? In the next class, we'll deal with paired t-tests and practical considerations. And that will complete this hypothesis testing chapter. And later there are two more small concepts like reinforcement learning and instance-based learning that will complete in another 4 sessions. Now, can you quickly answer what is true error? True error is associated with the sample or the larger population? Students, make it fast. What is true error?
Error in population, ma'am.
Error associated with a larger population. Error associated with unseen data. Machine learning models, error associated with unseen or new data points. That is drawn from the larger population. Now, what is sample error? Error associated
with sample population.
Yeah, sample, not population, sample. Sample,
Sample.
yeah, sample training examples, right? Now, what is level of significance denoted by alpha? The level of significance denoted by alpha states that only 5% or 10%, if you have taken alpha as 5%, then the level of significance is taken as 5%, indicating that only 5% chance is there to go against the null hypothesis. But 95% of the time, your data set is supporting in favor of alternative hypothesis, in favor of your statement what you want to actually accept. Okay, so that is called level of significance. 5% of the time your machine learning model may not perform well, but 95% of the time your machine learning model will perform well. Okay, so 5% there is risk with your model. That is called as level of significance. What is confidence interval? Confidence interval is a period or an interval or zone within which a particular value falls into with certain confidence. Say difference between sample error and true error, or the weight of the students in a class, or the performance of the students in a class. They may fall within a particular confidence interval range most of the time, say 95% of the time. In that case, we say the confidence interval is 95%. And 2.5% of the time, it may be very less, and 2.5% of the time, it may be extreme value. But 95% of the time, it may fall under a normal distribution. This is called as the confidence interval. Okay. Any doubt in today's class, students?
No, ma'am.
Okay, then we'll meet in the next class with the upcoming topics.